Welcome, Senator.
Hi. Hope everyone's well.
Likewise. All right. Chris, if you'd like to kick it off, we can get started.
Good afternoon and welcome to our Small Business Forum with Senator Richard Blumenthal. My name is Chris Conway, and I'm the Executive Director of the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce. Today's program is being brought to you in conjunction with the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce and the Town of West Hartford. We are available to be seen via Zoom, Facebook Live, West Hartford Community Interactive, and YouTube Live. To take this opportunity to welcome Senator Richard Blumenthal today. Thank you, Senator, for all you're doing and your accessibility during this crisis. And we appreciate your time today, making yourself available to the small business community. Just a quick rundown of how today is going to work. We're going to have some intros from some other folks from the Chamber and the Town of West Hartford. We'll also have Mayor Sherry Cantor come on and say a few words and introduce Senator Blumenthal. Senator Blumenthal will share some information from his office. And then we do have a couple of folks that submitted questions earlier, so we'll be hearing those questions. But if you have any questions for the Senator throughout, we are monitoring the Q&A, and we ask you to type your questions there so that they can be answered in the order they're received. So I am now going to turn over to the Chairman of the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Bob Kulikowski.
Hello, Robert Kulikowski. I'm the Chairman of the West Hartford Chamber and a small business owner. And I want to thank Senator Blumenthal for taking time out of his busy day to chat with the businesses and the residents of West Hartford. And thank you very much, Senator. And we look forward to hearing for what you have to say.
We're now going to hear from Kristen Gorski from West Hartford.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen Gorski. I work for the Town of West Hartford as their Economic Development Specialist. Thank you so much to the Senator as well as all his staff for quickly getting this together. And thank you so much to all of the attendees today. We're really excited to be able to bring this to all of our businesses. We know this has been a very challenging time. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules. And we hope that this is incredibly helpful for you. I know that it will be. And then without further ado, I would love to introduce Mayor Sherry Cantor.
Hi, I hope you can hear me. I had a little problem with my, thank you so much everyone for joining. Whoop. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone so much for joining today. I am very anxious to hear from the Senator and from our business community. I first want to thank Chris and Robert and Kristen for pulling this all together, and especially thank the Senator for being a part of this video conference. The Senator has been incredibly busy, as you know. He is always present in our community and is present to everyone and available to all of our questions and concerns. But he has been on a video conference tour and has met with, I was just reading the list, over 20, probably more than that, but many video conferences and talking to people just like you. And I will say that we have a very wide variety of businesses on the line right now. We are from landlords to nonprofits to professional services to restaurants and food service across the board. So very interested to hear from everybody. So with that, I just want to thank the Senator again for his incredible years of service to the state of Connecticut, for his friendship, and for being here today for us. Thank you so much, Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for your friendship and for your families. And really thank you to everybody on the line for all you're doing for an extraordinary community. I love West Hartford, and I wish at this moment I were walking down visiting shops as I've done with you, Mayor, in the past. Great fun and just a wonderful community and very close to my heart. I think I was last there for a major public event on the 20th of January for the Martin Luther King celebration or commemoration, and it seems like a lifetime ago, even though not really that long, a lifetime ago for all of us before the pandemic, and our lives have changed so radically. But my strong feeling is that the basic values that we share as a community, West Hartford, Connecticut, are still very much intact, maybe stronger than ever, because what I've seen over the last couple of months is hardship and heartbreak, but also real resilience and resoluteness and an incredible generosity and caring from so many people. And that includes the people of West Hartford, all of Connecticut, all of the country in many ways. And you know these stories, so I don't have to tell them to you, but the heartbreak is real. I've lost a friend whose children grew up playing with my children, gone in 5 days. This insidious disease plays no political favorites or racial or religion. It's all the same, and we are, as has been said many, many times, we are all in this together. And so in Congress, what we've been trying to do is meet an essential reality, which is we're in the midst of an economic crisis, and the unemployment numbers today are horrendous, 14.7% unemployment. But we're not going to recover economically until we turn the tide on the disease. People are going to vote with their feet, no matter what the orders are from the president or the governor. The people of Connecticut and the country are not going back to the shops, the malls, the restaurants until they feel safe. And that's why we need to continue the practices that have helped us turn the tide so far and begin to conquer the disease. In Connecticut's area, the epicenter, one of them, of the disease, we've seen these glimmers of hope and the leveling off of some of the numbers because of the hand washing, the mask wearing, the social distancing. We need to continue it, and we need, my first main point here, more testing, more contact tracing, more quickly, as well as more of it. And that's what we have tried to do in some of the emergency relief packages that we've done. Most recently, $25 billion as part of a $100 billion added to $130 billion going to our hospital and healthcare facilities. And in the Hartford area, you know well how really financially crippling the expenses have been, as well as the plummeting contributions and elective surgery remedy for many of the great hospitals of this area. So we need to do more on hospitals. We need to do more for state and local government. West Hartford is one of the most responsible, well-run, and managed local governments in the state of Connecticut, but we need more state aid for the agencies that are responsible for contact tracing and other health measures, but also because the expenses have been rippling throughout our state and our economy. And my guess is every local municipality in Connecticut is in need in one way or another of more of these kinds of revenue from the federal government. And that's one of our major objectives going forward in the relief package. It's called COVID-4 because we've done 3 major relief packages so far. And the last one had about $150 billion. Connecticut will get about $1.5 billion, but that's nowhere near enough. We need much more. And likewise, the PPP, Payroll Protection Program, we've had 2 tranches of money. The first $350 billion exhausted in 13 days. The second, about 2 weeks ago, another $370 billion directed to the smaller lenders in large part and the smaller businesses who did not have the opportunity to participate in the first phase of the program. My guess is that money has been exhausted, or it will soon be. literally within a day or so. So we'll probably need to replenish that PPP. The unemployment insurance program has been greatly expanded and increased. It's been expanded to sole proprietors, self-employed, independent contractors. It now includes furloughed as well as laid off employees. And it's $600 on top of what would be paid before, $600 per week for 4 months. So that's a major expansion. In fact, one of the most common questions I get is, are people still going to have the incentive to come to work? I think they will, because if they don't come to work, they'll be knocked off that unemployment insurance program. But more to the point, I think people want to work. And they'll want to work if they're given the right protective equipment, if they're given tests, and if they're made to feel safe. And if I have one sort of overriding message, it is the need for testing, for a feeling on the part of people that they will be safe if they go into restaurants or where, because they know the employees have been tested. They know that people are taking precautions. And we are beginning to turn the corner on the disease because of those measures, which eventually will help us to reopen the economy. I think there are a lot of other areas where we need to do things. You know, I propose a Heroes Fund for the frontline workers, the healthcare, clinicians, docs, nurses, but also first responders, police, fire. They're on the jobs every day. They're doing their jobs despite great risk to themselves. And likewise, grocery store clerks, post, people delivering the mail. All of those essential employees deserve that premium pay that would come from a Heroes Fund, $13 more per hour from the federal government, not from states or localities. Federal premium pay up to $25,000. And the goal is to reward, but also retain and recruit. Reward, retain, recruit. We ought to recognize those frontline workers and thank them with more than just words, but with also some financial recognition. And student debt, another pressing area where we need to do more. All kinds of other areas where we should really make a priority of continuing to put money into the hands of people who really need it, workers, families, small businesses, and make sure that those dollars do reach the people who need it. And that's part of what we're trying to do in reviewing the payroll protection program, make sure that the businesses who need it actually receive it. So there are a lot of unanswered questions I recognize about all of these programs. They have been sort of constructed as we went along. We had to do it very quickly. $2.2 trillion is roughly the size of the federal government's budget. We take months to do it. This program, we took 5 days. So there are going to be continuing questions, and I hope that we can get answers. I'll do my best to answer the questions that come up during this conversation. And thanks for all the great work that the Chamber is doing. It's really such a great resource for the business community. And small businesses really are the backbone of Connecticut's economy, the economy as a whole. You know, I came this morning, I went out to a defense subcontractor in Glastonbury, and they're doing tests there with saliva. Their workers drive into the parking lot, they're given a container, they do the saliva in the privacy of their car, they give back the container's sent to the lab, testing's done within 24, 48 hours. The more testing we can do, the less intrusive it is, the quicker the results, the more safe people are going to be feeling, and the more we can avoid a second wave, which is one of my great fears, that we are heading toward a second wave that could be even more serious than what we're going through right now. But we can prevent it if we take the right precautions. So thanks for your leadership, and look forward to the conversation.
Excellent, thank you. We're going to start. There were a few attendees who actually wrote in their questions ahead of time. So I'm going to go ahead and add Lisa Cole to the panel. And let's see if we can get her on. Lisa, are you there?
Yes.
Excellent. I'll go ahead and ask your question to the senator, please.
Oh, hi. Thank you for taking my question. I appreciate it. Actually, I'm going to pass it to my husband, Jay Dumont.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal, for personally listening to our problems. It has been frustrating trying to communicate. Primarily, I'm speaking about the PPP. The amount of information that's available is slim, and when we received our funds, we called our local bank. They told us they had no information for any of the questions I had. So they said, talk to your CPA, and if they give reasonable answers, then perhaps when you get your audit, you know, you will not, your funds will not be rescinded and turning it into a 1% loan. So just to let you know some of that stuff that's going on. But my main question is, we've received PPP funds a couple weeks ago. We're in a state, as you know, and I'm happy to be in this state because I appreciate the caution that's being taken on reopening. It is scary what's going on in the nation, because I feel like we may end up back where we were a few weeks ago. But so having said that, we have these funds, and we are being told to put all our employees on payroll, send them checks in the mail, and they're going to sit home and do nothing. So I have been advocating for this program to start on the date that your state that you live in allows you to open and use those funds effectively. Meaning, if you're open and you have a certain amount of sales and you have a certain amount of payroll, the government is going to pay for that payroll. As we all know, that's 75% of the spend. And that would allow us to take the sales that we generated, the payroll portion of it, and put that towards PPE equipment, put it towards marketing, putting it towards pre-opening expenses. Right now, if we want to keep that money, we're in week 2 going into week 3, we're going to have to just start sending checks out, effectively getting maybe a week or 2 of benefit of this. And it seems like it's defeating the purpose of helping the restaurant. We know it helps our employees, but of course they're already collecting. So I'd appreciate a comment. Thank you so much for your time.
That's a great question, and thanks for being on the call. And in the restaurant business, the need is particularly acute for flexibility, because as you said, you can't go back into business until May 20th at the earliest. And even then, your business may be half of what it was because it has to be conducted outdoors or because of physical distancing. By the way, I hate the word social distancing, because we don't want social isolation. We want physical distancing, not social distancing. We want to stay socially connected. But your business really requires the flexibility that I think SBA has to provide. And if SBA doesn't provide it, Congress, I think, will, because we've heard this story so many times. The business can't open. You can bring your employees back on the payroll, but they're not going to be doing anything. And when you bring them back later and they are actually working, your PPP has run out. So I think there has to be some flexibility. We're going to see more guidance from the SBA likely next week, this coming next week. I hope it is more flexible. And I'll just give you an example. Some SBA top-ranking officials have said to me, well, you know, they can wait to bring their employees on and then prepay them for part of the time. Well, I've said to them, are you going to give me something in paper that says they can do it? And they've said back to me, well, we're not authorized to put it on paper. We're just telling you there's nothing in the regs to prevent it. Well, that's not good enough. They have to actually issue the regulations. And so I'm hopeful that we'll see some more flexibility, if not from the SBA, then legislatively, because I fully recognize and the problem that you just raised. And I might just say, even at the time that we did this PPP program, as one part of a multi-trillion-dollar set of measures, we had no idea. I won't say we had no idea, but we could not fully comprehend the depth of this economic catastrophe. When you consider the unemployment numbers alone, and then all of the business problems that have arisen. And the PPP program has been, in some respects, a success. Here in Connecticut, about 30,000 businesses have PPP loans for a total of $2.5 billion. I hope and believe that we'll provide more money to the PPP in this next COVID relief package. But at the same time, we have to recognize the need for that kind of flexibility that you've just outlined.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Gary Doms, who also submitted a question ahead of time for the senator. Gary, if you're ready, go right ahead.
Sure, great. Thank you very much. My question has to do with liability for clients of people who would attend our businesses once we reopen. Is there any legislation proposed or considered to protect us from liability? Because the issue that I see is that somebody comes in a day, a week, a month later, they say they have COVID, and one of the places they were was my business, but they could have caught it any place. And is there any legislation being considered to protect us from that kind of activity? Thank you.
As you may have followed, the Senate Majority Leader has said there should be a kind of blanket immunity against all liability related to COVID-19. I think that is a way overstatement of the dangers of lawsuits or legal responsibility. I think that the issue here is really what are employers or businesses going to do to protect workers? Now, I'll just give you an example of what has been done already. Electric Boat found that some of their employees didn't want to come to work because they were afraid. And a few who came to work actually were infected. What did they do? Well, they began providing protective equipment, masks, and other kinds of personal protective equipment. Electric Boat, by the way, as you know, is a defense contractor. They make submarines. We can't say, and I'm a member of the Armed Services Committee, well, you know, we're in the midst of a pandemic, so, well, we'll make our submarines a year or two from now. The Russians aren't waiting. The Chinese aren't waiting. Our national defense can't work. Their work is essential at Electric Boat. And so they reorganized. Now they have multiple shifts. They've provided better protective equipment. They're doing more testing. They have fulfilled a responsibility to protect their workers. Now, the system is far from perfect. They need more testing probably, and they are seeking it. They need more protective equipment. They're seeking it. But an employer who tries to meet the standard of care, as you know, in so many other areas, has nothing to fear here. So I think the solution here is for businesses and employers to be provided with the protective equipment they need, the masks, the gowns, the testing, And that's a federal responsibility, which I'm going to be very blunt. Federal government has failed to fulfill. The president's failed to use the Defense Production Act to get more of that equipment and supplies. He could use that law, it dates from the Korean War, just as we have done in other wars, to order the production of that equipment to keep your workers safe and avoid the fear that you have of potential liability. But I think the solution is not to worry about closing the courthouse doors or a blanket immunity. I think it is to aid employers and businesses to safeguard the health of their employees. And to answer your question very directly, I don't think that kind of blanket immunity is going to be forthcoming from the Congress. I don't think absolving everyone of responsibility and telling victims you can't have a day in court if someone does something reckless and irresponsible is going to be part of a COVID-4 package, the next package.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that briefly,
Sure.
I appreciate your comments on getting PPE because so my business is I have a salon suite business. So I've got 44 individual private suites that I rent to beauty care professionals. So they're going to be running, let's say, half dozen to 10 people a day through the place. And clearly they need all kinds of protective gear, which the state has done a good job of telling us the things that we need to have, but good luck trying to find it all. Everybody's scrambling like crazy trying to get masks, gowns, barbicide, disinfectant spray, disinfectant wipes, etc. And they're virtually impossible to find, to be honest with you. I was lucky enough to acquire a touchless thermometer that came via Amazon today, and of course it doesn't work. Fine Chinese product. So I have to return that and order a different one, I guess. But so we really need help getting the PPE is my point. And anything you can do to help us with that would be greatly appreciated.
I think that comment is very, very well taken. I hear it often, but I will tell you, you're putting it in that way is very powerful. And, you know, again, our governors, by the way, Republican and Democrat, Governor DeWine and Governor Hogan of Ohio and Maryland, as well as Governor Cuomo and Governor Murphy of New York and New Jersey, and of course, Governor Lamont, who has been at the National Forum, they have all filled the gap that the federal government should be filling in terms of providing this equipment. You talk about scrambling, they've been scrambling. And I have talked to the administrator, the top official of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which has legal responsibility. And they have no strategy. They have no strategy. I could say it 10 more times, and it wouldn't change the fact that they have failed. So I'm not in any way trying to sugarcoat what is the reality here. The president has that power. He should use it. He could solve this issue, maybe not overnight, but I'll give you another example from my personal experience. I was on the phone this morning with the head of Lockheed Martin, and I was talking to her, Marilyn Houston, because they own, you know, one of their companies is Sikorsky. So we're doing the defense budget. And we were having a conversation, and she mentioned, you know, we're producing PPE. We're producing masks. I said, have you done that before? She said, no, but we know the country needs it. Now, the president hasn't ordered them to do it. A lot of these businesses are stepping forward. And she was telling me how her engineers redesigned their assembly line. I'm not putting it in engineering terms, but in layman's terms, that's what they did to produce PPE. So their employees, among others, at Sikorsky could feel safer coming to work. So this is a really riveting need. And I'm so grateful, Gary, that you've raised it. We have to face it as a nation, and the federal government should be taking responsibility. And by the way, talking about the federal government, the CDC has guidance. They have procedures and protocols that they would recommend. I haven't seen them. You haven't seen them. You know why? Because the White House has blocked them, at least as of a few hours ago. I hope maybe they've changed their mind. But, and I know we're not being political on this call. I don't mean to be political. I can tell you over the last 5 hours, I've talked with colleagues on both sides of the aisle, and we share this frustration. You know, this disease doesn't hit only blue states or red states, it hits everyone. So I think the point you make is really fundamental and very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Now, throughout this event that we've been holding today, we have been allowing people to type questions into our Q&A box. Tom Allen, are you available to present some of those to the Senator?
Yeah, sure can.
Thank you.
I'm going to pose a question to you, Senator, that I know we've come up a number of times, and I see a couple people have asked this here today. That is in regards to the unemployment situation. Of course, the $600 unemployment additional compensation that's provided, and what that does for discouraging people potentially from going back to work. So question is put forward by Julianne Roth. She says, I have some staff that have refused to come back to work because the extra unemployment payment is greater than their regular wages. What is the plan to help address this situation, or what can she do in this situation?
Sir, you have it now within your power to solve this problem. All you have to do is call the Department of Labor. Give them the name and social security number of that employee, and they're gone from the rolls of unemployment insurance. The law now provides that if somebody refuses to come back to work to the job that's offered, they're off unemployment insurance. That's the law. It's always been the law. So for the employer who says, you know, I make more money being on unemployment insurance, I'm really not going to come back to work. If you know who he or she is and you want to comply with the law, report them. I'll give you a little insight into how we devised this program. We all had the fear that people might want to stay home in certain parts of the country at certain income levels, because $600 per individual per week over 4 months is a lot of money, and it was intended to be a lot of money because people have been hard hit. They're struggling to put food on the table. They're trying to pay their rent and mortgages and utilities, and they're suffering in terms of healthcare too. And to bring the economy back as a stimulus, our goal was to put money into the hands of workers and families and small businesses. And so a number of my colleagues and I asked the Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, can we design this system so that we cut them off at the income level that they would receive if they went back to work, or maybe below it, so they have an incentive? And the Department of Treasury came back to us and said, yeah, we think we can do it. We're not sure. If we try to do it, it will take us maybe 2-3 months to try to do it. And all of us unanimously, or I would say almost unanimously, by vast majority said, let's go ahead and just put money into the hands of these people. And the second thing he said was the cost of doing this kind of individual cutoffs for different states, different people, different industries, the costs are going to way exceed whatever we'll save. So you're going to spend money to do computer programming that could go into the hands of people that they'll spend and hopefully bring back the economy. The ultimate answer to this question is, if somebody fails to come back to work after you've made them an offer, the law says they don't get any more unemployment insurance, no matter what the amount is that they get. $600, $400, $3, or nothing in addition. That's always been the law. So the biggest constraint is that you can report them. But here's the other thing, and I know I sound a little naive. I really think people want to work. I think they want to come back to normal lives. I think they want to really see the people they work with, go back to the work that was considered important. And you can also tell them, by the way, they only have 4 months. And if they exhaust it now, they're not going to have it if they really need it.
Okay. So we have another question here. It came in from a gentleman named Kevin. And Kevin, I apologize, I don't have your last name. I don't see it. Kevin had asked you, Senator, what does it mean for the PPP program for those who are getting funding in the second round now that the most recent additional funding has been provided, particularly if they get a loan anytime after this past Tuesday, which this past Tuesday marks 8 weeks until June 30th. So anyone getting loan funding now after that date, will the funding be cut off on June 30th, or will it continue beyond that? And then what would be available for extensions to PPP for those who have yet to get the funding?
If I understand the question, will there be more money? There may well be more money. Will there be an extension of time? There could be. We don't know for sure. All you know right now is that the money is available as of this date for the next 2 months. And we hope there will be flexibility in the program, but we don't know for sure what the SBA will do. What we know is that the entire country is demanding more flexibility. And I think my colleagues will respond in legislation if the SBA is not more flexible in extending the period of time.
Okay. Now we have a couple of questions that have come in from folks who are asking about reopening procedures. And I know that there's been some guidelines put out by the state level, but for some folks here who are asking particularly for looking for information on where they'll be classified as to the reopening procedures and when will they'll be given instructions as when to reopen. What would you say, Senator, from the federal perspective on that? What would be the are there guidelines that are be coming down from the federal level at that point on these points?
I hope there will be federal guidelines. The CDC has responsibility, along with the president, for issuing those guidelines. The CDC has been blocked from issuing the kind of guidance that is important. Governor Lamont, I think today, is going to issue some guidelines or practices that he would recommend. And so I think there will be guidelines coming down very, very soon as today, as a matter of fact.
Okay. Let's see here. I see a follow-up question somebody had asked, wanted to verify with the PPP program, is it 8 weeks or 2 months from now that the PPP funding would be available? Is it the full 2 months, or is it specifically 8 weeks?
I think the date is June 30th, so 8 weeks is usually 2 months, but whatever that, if it's a matter of days, it would be maybe a day or so. It's June 30th.
Okay, great. Let's see here. As soon as possible. Okay, and then somebody else, I don't have a name for this person, they did not give one, but they had asked when they expect to get some clear guidelines on what will be required to meet the forgiveness portion of the PPP program.
That's a commonly asked question. Remember, 75% has to go into payroll, 25% rent, utilities, other overhead. My hope is there'll be some flexibility in that 75% figure, because some businesses may have only 50% of their expenses in payroll. As long as you keep people on your payroll, as long as you keep your workforce stable, I am hopeful that the loan will be fully forgiven. And we should know that sometime this coming week. I say that because that's what we've been told by the SBA, and there'll be additional guidance, or FAQs as they're formally known, that will spell it out. But the watchword here should be flexibility on the part of the SBA.
Okay. And then let's see here. A question just came in. A woman named Diana Sousa. Diana, you had asked, can the senator confirm that nonprofits that are self-insured for unemployment will indeed get reimbursed for half those payments that they make to furloughed or laid off employees?
That is a very, very important question on a topic that I neglected to cover. Remember, PPP is available to nonprofits. Let me repeat, 501c3s can borrow money from the SBA and have that loan in effect forgiven if they maintain their payrolls. And that should apply to all nonprofits.
Okay. And then another question that just came in, excuse me, from Susan. And Susan, I don't have your last name, I apologize, but I just have Susan here, said she got enough, she was fortunate enough to get some PPP funding in the first round, and her money will run out on May 20th. But she wants to know what might be available to continue to fund her business after May 20th, since she expects she still have to run on unlimited funding through that time.
I don't know whether you've tried some of the other SBA programs, the EIDL loans, emergency injury, disaster loan program, or the grant program. There are other kinds of SBA programs that might be available to you. So again, you can try calling my office. Tom can give you the best number.
Mm-hmm.
What's the best number, Tom?
The best number for our office in Hartford is 860-258-6940. And again, that is 860-258-6940. Or you can find the contact information on our website for the senator. That's blumenthal.senate.gov. Again, that's blumenthal.senate.gov. And
my cell phone is 202-641-0532. 202-641-0532. I've given my cell phone out, by the way. I have learned more from the calls coming to me and the texts than I can say. It's been enormously valuable to me at a time when I can't be out and around the way I normally am. You know, usually on a Friday, like today, I come back generally Thursday night. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm literally one end of the state to another, 7, 8, 10 stops, and can't do that. So the way I learn, the way I hear what's actually going on is by text, by calling, by these kind of video conferences. I've done them with small businesses across the state. I don't know how many chambers of commerce, but literally thousands by now, thousands of small businesses, as well as domestic violence advocates, homeless shelters, nonprofits, religious organizations, as well as food insecurity groups, AARP, and it's just been enormously valuable. So the answer to that question is you can contact me as well as that number, and I hope you'll do it, because hearing from you, learning from you is very, very important. And I'll just add one point here, because it's directly relevant to this question. I've made a proposal for a complete overhaul of all these programs, and using what we have called a Paycheck Security Act. Paycheck Security Act. It's been proposed by myself, a colleague of mine, Doug Jones of Alabama, Mark Warner of Virginia, and Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Now, if you know anything about the Democratic Party, Doug Jones of Alabama is kind of like on the right side. Bernie Sanders, well, I think he would acknowledge he's on the progressive side, left, liberal, whatever you want to call it. And Mark Warner and I are kind of, we're progressive, but we're kind of centrist moderates. So that's the Democratic Party. There's also a similar proposal on the Republican side from Josh Hawley of Missouri. What would we do? We would say to every business, we're going to fund your payroll. We're just going to provide you money for your whole payroll, up to $90,000 per person. That's if you say you've suffered a 20% drop in revenue month over month. So you decline in revenue, your payroll is covered. Why substitute this program for unemployment insurance and PPP and emergency injury disaster loan and all of the alphabet soup of programs? Well, first of all, it's simple and it's verifiable and it keeps intact the workforce. In fact, in some ways, for me, that's the most important thing about this program. It keeps intact the workforce. It puts money into the hands of those workers, but it also enables the employers to say, I'm going to just continue paying you guys. You stay on my payroll, and when we reopen fully, we'll do it in stages. You'll be coming back to the place where you work right now. It's a form of stability. It's a guarantee, prevents us from going over the cliff. Now, I'm throwing it out there, not because I think it's going to be adopted next week by the United States Congress, but I think it's a concept that's worth your hearing about. And Mark Warner, Bernie Sanders, myself, Doug Jones, we're going to continue to advocate, and we're going to reach out to Josh Hawley and some of my Republican colleagues who actually have endorsed a similar concept, because maybe it will get bipartisan traction. And it would answer your question. You've exhausted PPP, what do you do now? Because PPP is 2 months, and we need to extend the 2 months. You need to make it more flexible. I know I've said that before. I apologize for repeating it. We're in the midst of an economic catastrophe, unlike any other in our lifetime. And we're going down right now, not up. And we don't see light yet at the end of the tunnel in terms of the economic crisis. And that's a pretty frightening prospect.
Okay. So I see here we had a question that came in here, actually 2 questions that came in, particularly on some PPP related stuff, one from Sarah and one from Mike, who had some specific questions about the program. Sarah had asked here that what was the base number of employees that the employer needs to have on their staff for June 30th in order to qualify for the loan forgiveness for PPP. And Mike had asked, is it possible to prepay expenses if your PPP timeline of 8 weeks is about to expire? And then will borrowers who get the money be given a 1099 form to fill out for the loan forgiveness?
Let me take them in order. 1099 form, I don't know whether you'll be given a 1099 form. That's going to be for the SBA, I hope to say this coming week, how exactly forgiveness will work and what forms will be used. The second point, on the issue of how many employees, if they're less than 500, you would qualify under PPP. And I think that even if you're the only employee, you can be covered as well. I think some businesses have found that they are, in fact, covered if the owner is the only employee. You would qualify. So there's no minimum number. There is a maximum of 500 for PPP.
Okay. So as a follow-up to that one from Sarah, who was asking as a follow-up to her question, and a couple of other people, again, we're going back to the question about rehiring people, some concerns over unemployment, the employment compensation, people not willing to come back to work. So Sarah had asked, particularly in her case, she's the one had asked about the question regarding having a number of employees on staff by June 30th to make sure that she gets qualified for loan forgiveness. Another person had asked here, again, because of the concerns over safety about coming back to the workplace, how do you handle a situation with employees who don't want to come back because of safety concerns? What would you say about addressing those situations with for employers when they have these situations with their employees?
Well, if someone legitimately has a safety concern because of a pre-existing condition or some vulnerability, cancer treatment, for example, you wouldn't be disqualified from the program simply because that employee didn't come back. I would recommend trying to document that fact. So that's a kind of a special situation. In general, the number of employees is important. In other words, the whole purpose of the PPP is to have payrolls maintained. And that's the general guiding light here. If someone moves out of state or goes on maternity leave or whatever, these are legitimate reasons for not having those particular people, whether temporarily or long-term. So I think, again, flexibility is going to be very important.
Okay. And then I think looking through the questions here, let me see if there's anyone that's a topic we haven't gotten to. I think we've actually covered quite a number of the topics and a lot of questions here. Let's see. It looks like we have, again, a couple other questions for folks, and I'll let you comment on this, but I do see a couple of people who are asking, again, for when they think their particular industry or their particular business. This is coming from a couple of people who have some boutique businesses, fitness boutiques, smaller related businesses. When will they see guidelines on reopening? Where should they look for guidance? Should they reach out to get more information on when they're going to be reopening?
I'm going to first make clear that everything that I've said in response to these business owners also applies to nonprofits. Diana Sousa, if it's the same Diana Sousa I know, hope you're all well, hope your family's well, and hope George is well. But all of what I've said applies to nonprofits. So very important to emphasize, nonprofits can apply for PPP as well. When will we see more guidance? Perhaps today. It may have already been released. But if not, I think it will be very, very, very shortly, because the governor said May 20th is the date when there's going to be a general beginning of reopening. Now, two important points here. First of all, the approach here has been a regional one. Governor Lamont has been a real leader here in Connecticut. He and others have filled that gap left by the federal government in failing to lead. But he has said he's going to be working with a regional group. Cuomo, Murphy, Baker, and others in this region are going to try to work together, which is very appropriate and smart to do, because we need regional strategy. We need a national strategy. And so I think that's the kind of guidance that will be forthcoming very soon. What will it look like? Well, what I've heard, you've heard it too, is that restaurants may be told they should begin reopening by doing their seating outdoors. I think that approach has disadvantages, obviously bad weather, other kinds of logistical obstacles, but also it means that the amount of business will be greatly constrained. I don't know whether restaurants can operate successfully at 1/2 their normal business. The same kinds of constraints, physical distancing, mask wearing, other kinds of precautions may apply to other businesses. I think that's what it will look like generally. the space between people, maybe wearing masks indoors, uh, those kinds of protocols may be applied. But again, we should know more very quickly.
Okay, I think that's about all the questions I can see at the moment. Oh, nope, one final question here just came in from a gentleman named Johnny. Had a question about insurance companies denying claims for business interruption, and wanted to know what can be done about that and what the status is for business interruption insurance or other programs available for that.
I wish I had better news about business interruption claims. Generally, insurance companies have been absolutely unforthcoming. They claim that the policies provide no business interruption for pandemics such as we're experiencing now. I'm going to continue to advocate that there be some leeway here. But as of right now, there are no government programs that can force the insurance companies to provide coverage without some kind of legal action. And right now, they have said that their belief is that the policies provide no coverage. And I have not seen any move by government agencies to do any enforcement in this area. If let me just close on this note. If you want to contact me and talk about it further, I would be delighted to do it. Likewise, if we have questions that have been unanswered here, I hope you'll contact me. I want to thank you for giving back for all you've done for communities and for the community of West Hartford. These have been great questions, and I'd be happy to answer more if there are any. Tom, do you see any more?
Not at this point. Nope. I think we've about covered it at this point.
Yeah, I see one more here. Can you see it? There's an indication there may be a question.
Let's see here. Nope. Yep.
No.
Sarah had asked a question about in regards to the closing of schools, and Jesse, thank you, Jesse, for responding back, indicating yes, Sarah should follow up with Governor Lamont on that issue. That's a state level decision.
It is a state level decision, and I really hope we'll be back to school in the fall. I think it's so important. In the meantime, I've been an advocate of broadband connectivity. You know, the parts of the state that in effect are connectivity deserts. There's a digital divide, the homework gap. Even in a relatively well-to-do state like Connecticut, anywhere from 10, maybe 20% of our students don't have that connectivity. So I've led a letter with 26 of my colleagues urging that the next package have more money for the E-rate and the Lifeline program would provide that connectivity. But there's no substitute for going back to school, and I hope we'll be able to do that.
Okay, and one final question just came in. Mike, I believe Mike had asked a question. It looks like a follow-up to this. Is it possible to prepay expenses under the PPP loan program if your loan is expiring?
I think it should be possible to use some of that money to prepay payroll and other expenses. I hope the SBA will clarify that it is possible. It should be. I hope that it will be. And certainly up to a certain amount, I believe that the SBA will count that as expenses under the loan forgiveness program.
Okay. And then let's see here. One more here. Yep, came in. Gentleman named Stephen. Stephen, again, I'm sorry I don't have your last name here, but Stephen asked a question, which I think goes back to a point you had addressed earlier, Senator. This is in regards to the protections for businesses, the broad protections against lawsuits for anything related to COVID-19. And he would like to know what you think the situation is going to be coming out of Washington. That will those protections be forthcoming for businesses, or what would the status of that is? What do you see as the best avenue forward for dealing with that?
Protections
Against lawsuits. This is the protections against lawsuits for businesses.
Well, you know, in the first package, or not first, but the third package, the major package that we did a couple of weeks ago, there was some limited legal protection against lawsuits. I don't think there's going to be the broad kind of sweeping blanket immunity that the majority leaders propose. I think that's going to be a non-starter. If people have specific suggestions, I'd be glad to hear them. You know, generally in this country, we believe that victims of wrongdoing have their day in court. Generally, we believe that workers who are forced to work under unsafe conditions should have the ability to hold their employers accountable. And by the way, employers would be very well served if OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, would do its job and issue guidance and standards in this COVID-19 age. It's failed to do so. And it's been pressed to issue that guidance, but it's failed to do so. That's where I think that the relief is going to be forthcoming. If the federal agencies clarify what the standard should be, as I said earlier, the responsible employers have nothing to fear if they provide the protective gear or other kinds of safeguards to their employees.
Okay, I don't see any other questions have come in at this point. Yep, not seeing any others on my end.
Do you want to close it out, Chris? Or Mayor Cantor, or anyone else who has? Robert?
Well, as the chairman of the chamber, Senator, thank you again for your time. It's been very informative, and we appreciate all the information, and that you're looking out for the residents of West Hartford and in the broader Connecticut area. I do want to say thank you. Sherry, you have anything?
Sure. I just want to also say thank you. Thank you for the businesses for asking your questions. The offer of the senator to text or call his cell phone is not a soft offer. He's serious about it, and he does listen. And so I think that's really important. You've always been so accessible, and we're so appreciative of that. And you truly listen and are very honest in your answers. So again, very appreciative. Thank you for all of the panelists for your coordination and making this happen. We have a wonderful, vibrant business community, and we're going to do everything we can to help you get back to life. But first, our first priority is keeping everybody safe and making sure that we all make it through this healthcare crisis. Thank you.
Absolutely. Very well said, Mayor. First priority has to be stay well, keep safe. I hope everyone is. 202-641-0532. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you, and thanks for all the insights and the information that you provide. Very, very valuable. Great questions, great comments. Thank you to West Hartford, and I look forward to being with all of you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Hi, everyone. Be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.